All right, so we did say we're going to be using Jenkins. If you are using some other continuous integration, for instance, Heroku has its own continuous integration. There's quite a few other products that provide continuous integration. We're asking you to at least follow a parallel or an equivalent implementation of what we are going to be covering here. Okay. But Jenkins, I would say it's by far pretty much the industry standard for automating builds and deployments. As we mentioned earlier, Jenkins is just a plain old Java web application that you run it as a WAR file that you can download and try it out locally on your machine. And what it basically does is that it tries to mimic all what you normally would do at the command line, when you're preparing to build and package and test and deploy to an environment. All those steps that you do yourself manually at the terminal, you'll be able to grab those things and just create scripts and have Jenkins either periodically or based on certain triggers and logic to run this for you automatically for you, right? And do this so that you don't have to care about this, right? So it's a WAR file. You can, I encourage you to try it out just to, at least once, to download the WAR file locally on your machine, just to get a flavor for this running on your machine and having full control of the machine and your environment. But we have installed one for you. It's a CS4500 Jenkins, which we're asking you to please create an account. Now, you'll hear me say quite a bit of often refer to pipelines or jobs, and these terms of pipelines and jobs are somewhat interchangeable, and basically they are just a logical grouping of steps, right, that need to occur to go from grabbing your source code from source control, right, all the way to being deployed in a deployment machine, right? And all those logical steps, right, we can be encoded or can be scripted in a pipeline, right? So Jenkins uses a pipeline as this abstraction of all collections of script commands, right? Pipelines can be either copied and pasted into the Jenkins user interface, or more commonly, they can be actual ASCII text files that live already in your GitHub repositories. You're just like any other source file, all right? Usually these files have the standard name Jenkins file with capital J, right? But you can really call it anything you want and put it anywhere you want, as long as you tell Jenkins where to find it, okay? Jenkins will, by default, assume that your Jenkins file is at the root of your repository and have that particular name, capital J Jenkins, okay? And basically Jenkins will contain multiple steps of OS terminal commands that go against your local operating system. So whatever commands that you use should be native to whatever operating system you use. So if it's Linux, most of these are Unix based, so you should be okay with Unix based commands. To create new pipelines, you can just go to a new item. So let's see, we have Jenkins here. And so this is what you might see. What might be a little bit different for you is that we're going to create folders for each one of the teams or for each one of the organizations. So you'll be in one of these folders, and you'll be able to do whatever we discussed today in that folder, but you won't be able to go to anybody else's folder, right? And work there. So you'll only have permissions to be there. So I'm not going to use any folders right now. Let's just create a hello world here. So you go to a new item. You can create that you want a pipeline, and this would be hello CS4500. You can click on OK, and then you're in a user interface that allows you to configure this pipeline. And you can copy and paste a Jenkins file content here in this text area, Or you can say that to instead grab it from a GitHub repository, right? You can choose to grab it from GitHub or from Subversion, or as we'll see in a minute, you can just copy and paste it into this text file, right? So for instance, here we have a really trivial Jenkins file, which we can grab here and then paste it in that text area. We can just paste it in there. And as you'll see here, we just have here a simple terminal command that echoes the text "Hello World." Okay, and you can say save it. Once you save it, we are here. This is the pipeline dashboard that allows you to interact with the dashboard. Notice at the top you have a navigation bar at the top. You can still go back to the Jenkins at the beginning, and then you can navigate to the brand new pipeline we just created. So you always go to the top and then navigate down to the pipeline you just created. Your top will be the folder. You'll always be in the folder. You won't be able to get out of the folder, right? So everything I'm talking about here would be within your folder. Once you're there, you can take a look at you can manually build the pipeline by clicking on Build Now. This will kick off a build, and down at the bottom you'll see a history of all the builds that you've how many builds you've run. Right now there's only one of them. It's currently running. I think it's done. And then you can navigate to the build. And now this is the dashboard for this particular build, right? And where you can see some of the results of having run this build. For instance, you can look at the console, and this is what the console at the terminal, when the pipeline was run against the command line interface of the remote operating system. Yes, and you can see here the echo and what the console spit out. Make sense? All right. You can look at the status and see that it was successful, or you can remove the build if you don't need it anymore. Okay. If I run it again, you'll see that the build history will just keep track of the numerals of how many times have you built it, right? And so the TAs or myself or anyone can go here and see exactly what happened, right, with the console, and any exceptions, any tests that might have failed. You could see exactly, right, why the build is failing by looking at the console. Make sense? All right. All right. So let's keep going here. Right. So let's talk about pipelines. So pipelines, as we just introduced the first pipeline as a logical collection of logical steps to go from source control all the way down to deployment. Now, pipeline, again, it's a logical grouping that allows you to identify multiple what are called stages. And stages are, again, a logical grouping of steps. And the actual steps are way down here. It's just arbitrary or abstract collections of things within things, right? Just given these names that have become common in the jargon for folks that we've been using Jenkins for a while. So pipeline is the biggest grouping of bag of logical steps. Stages allow you to collect multiple stages, and then each stage might have multiple steps. Stages, it has the connotation of large collections of steps, right? Like for instance, that typically you might want to break up your deployment into these big steps. You know, you first need to go and fetch the content from source control, and then you need to compile it, and then you need to test it, and then you need to package it, and then you need to deploy it. So these are large steps. Each one of these steps might include many sub-steps, right? So stages is the largest collection of these steps, right? The actual steps are down here. Steps that are the low-level command line interface commands that are executed against the local operating system. So let's create a pipeline here. Let's go back up and create another pipeline. So new pipeline. So pipeline CS4500 and pipeline, create a new one, and again we can navigate down to the pipeline and just paste that and say save. But now the difference between the first one and this one is that when we do run it, when we do build, right, the user interface tells us what stage am I stuck in, or which part of the stage am I currently working on, and it will create one of these boxes, one of these rectangles for every single stage, right, so that we can report things at a particular granularity and say what are the things that happen in this stage and what happens in the other stage. And presumably what we'd like to be able to do is have each stage depend on the previous stage. Meaning, if I cannot get the content from the source control, why even bother trying to compile, right? And while I'm compiling, if I fail to compile, why bother trying to package it, right? And if I can't package it, why bother trying to deploy it? So these steps, these stages allow you to create dependencies between these stages so that we can abort, right, any process at any one of these stages, so that we can don't have to continue with the following stages. Also here allows you to look at the logs at a high level. In this particular case, just anything that had been logged to the console, or if you want to look at the raw, if you want to look at the raw console, you can go into the particular build and then look at the console output, that what actually got displayed in the console. Okay. It also shows you, what stage it was working on. Okay. Look at the console output.